Welcome to the MBA Mission podcast, where every week we discuss different MBA application components and give our expert guidance on everything business school admissions related.
Hi, this is Harold Simansky here with the MBA Mission podcast. I'm a senior admissions consultant, and I'm here today with Gavriella Semaya, one of my colleagues. Hi, Gavi.
Hi, Harold. Nice to be
Gavi,
here.
It's great for you to be here, and today's topic is about something that people frequently start conversations with when they speak to us. School selection, where should I apply? And as I'm sure you know, the second sentence is, I want to go to Harvard, Stanford, or Wharton.
Right.
And at that point, I say, that's wonderful. I love the idea. We support you. Wherever you want to go is where you apply to. That said, these are very hard schools to get into. So on that note, when people ask you, oh, where else should I apply to, or how should I think about applying to different places, how do you think about this?
Well, taking a step back to begin with, when clients tell me that they want to go to these, those three schools, right? It's Harvard, Stanford, Wharton, or bust. I'll ask them quite honestly, do you genuinely want to go to these schools, or are they on your list because of the brand name? And sometimes it's a bit of both. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to pursue it for the brand name, but I want to understand where the person is coming from to begin with. And as you said, like, if that's where you want to apply, that's what we'll do. But I also know that those schools are very different, and people lump them in as if they're monolithic. It's kind of the same way people always say, oh, I want to go into PE or VC. Those are not the same things.
Yes.
So I ask people, well, HBS is very, very academic, right? It's really all about the case study. It's really all about the classroom. It's intense. And I've had clients or consults say to me, you know what? I don't know that that's what I want to sign up for 2 years. And it's not the only way to get where you want to go. And that's kind of the starting point for what are the other schools that you might want to consider. I look at it, two primary ways, right? One to me is, the first question is it going to get you where you want to go? If you're going to spend 6 figures and 2 years of your life on this, for it not to get you where you want to go in your career, well, then it's probably not the right investment. And so that's kind of the first criteria. If you're really interested in technology, don't go to a school that doesn't have a pipeline into technology, that doesn't have a track record there, that doesn't have courses in that area, that doesn't have recruiting to those kinds of companies, right? It might be the most fun school. It might be, it might be UCLA happens to be good for technology. I'm more thinking of like beautiful West Coast weather, but you know what, if that's not interesting, it's not going to get you where you want to go. You can have there are other ways to live in California. The second question for me is
Gabi,
the culture fit piece. Oh yeah.
Picking up on one thing that you said and somewhat parenthetical here. Obviously, being an entrepreneur myself, I talk to a lot of potential clients who they themselves want to be entrepreneurs.
Yes.
And I will frequently say to them, let me understand this. You want to spend $250,000 in 2 years of your life in school rather than taking $250,000 in 2 years of your life and throwing it into that dream.
Into the company, right?
Exactly right. And there's a lot of reasons why entrepreneurs should go to business school. Go to business school to start a company really is not one. I don't think it's one. More importantly, the admissions committee doesn't think it's one.
Yes, 100% agree. And I often tell clients who are aspiring founders that, to your point, is this the path that you need to take to get there? And it may be that it is, right? I mean, there's no doubt that business school will give you entrepreneurial skills, but there's no substitute in the end for doing it when it comes to being an entrepreneur and founding a company. And so you can simulate that in business school, right? But from an admissions perspective, that's usually why I advise founders to first say their short-term goal is to work for a startup.
Yes.
Get a feel for what it's like to try to build something from scratch. If you're interested in a particular field or vertical, go work for an ed tech startup. See what the real challenges are on the ground. And then once you've got some lessons, some insights, then you can strike out on your own. And I think from an admissions perspective too, it's just more security in terms of their probable successful employment
100%.
Upon graduation.
Yeah, 100%. It was once explained to me, this notion here, don't say you want to do your own startup when you graduate business school, because the reason is most of those startups fail. At the end of the day,
90-something%, right?
Yeah, exactly. You're good. They may have a alumni of theirs who 6 months, a year later is nowhere, and that's something that certainly the admissions committee is worried about. But going back, I interrupted you.
No, that's okay. I was on that note. I was actually going to say the other thing that I've heard from one of our colleagues, Katie, she told me this early on, was that the schools don't want you to treat them as incubators. They want you to be engaged in the community when you're there. And so I think oftentimes people think of it as, oh, I'm going to tap into the VC network, in Silicon Valley by being at Stanford. And it's not to say that you can't do that. And, even if you say your short-term goal is to work for a startup, it doesn't mean that you can't explore founding one on your own. But I think, again, from the admissions committee's perspective, they're not looking to be accelerators. That's not their role.
No, or a Rolodex for that matter.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Save yourself some money, go to LinkedIn, and take out to lunch everybody, 50 people. That's going to be a lot of nice conversations, a lot of lunches, and a lot cheaper. So,
yes.
But I think I've interrupted you twice or three times.
No, that's okay. That's all right. So the second point that I was going to say, the first was, when I'm thinking about school selection, is will it get you where you want to go professionally? The second is sort of the cultural piece, which is, think about whether you're going to thrive in this environment. Are you someone who does really well in large groups, such that you'll be, at home in a Wharton or a Columbia or, these schools that have hundreds upon hundreds? Or are you, more comfortable in smaller groups where their socialization is kind of built in? Those are things that I think are important to ask, because if you're going to get lost in the shuffle or you're not going to speak up because you feel like you're, in this massive crowd, then you're not going to get as much out of it. And I also tell clients that it's perfectly okay not to go to a school if they don't want to spend 2 years of their life in a city or in the middle of nowhere if you're at Tuck, right? Those are valid reasons, to demote certain schools from your list. And the last thing is always just talk to other students, talk to recent alums. They will give you, the real kind of unvarnished perspective on what it's like to be there. Better than I can tell you if I haven't been to that school. I know the school inside and out, but I haven't been through the experience. And so I think there's no substitute for talking to students.
Right. No, that makes sense. So now we'll do sort of a round robin here. Harvard, Stanford, and Wharton. Everybody knows them, no frequent come with them. But just throw out at me some other schools that you really like, and sometimes why, or sometimes just vibe. What are some other schools? And I can also share some other schools. In fact, I'll start. Okay.
Go for it.
School lower down the list for most people is University of Washington Foster. And the reason I like Foster a lot, in fact, I love University of Washington Foster for a few reasons. First of all, location is fantastic in Seattle. They're not right in the city on a great sort of college campus. You can have that big university experience. Their career services are amazing. I think something like the number of careers service providers, number of advisors versus students.
Right, the ratio is really high.
It's just huge. As well as they get great jobs in the top tech firms, whether it's Amazon, whether it's Microsoft, some of those other interesting places, other companies in the Pacific Northwest. That small program, very collegial. I like Foster a lot. So that's my
I like Foster a lot too, but you have to be interested in those fields. It's such a small cohort that I just think, you're not going to get as much out of it I wouldn't put it high on my list if you want to go into finance. Right. But I would put it high on my list if you are targeting the companies in that area or in those fields. But I agree with you. It's definitely one that's overlooked. I mean, I think the ones that often come into mind, I think about it in terms of kind of end goal first, right? So let's go with this finance kind of example. Obviously, Booth is really strong in finance. Going further down the list, you have Duke and Darden that are really strong in the area. Tuck is really strong in that area. And so, I think which schools are strong in that area, and from that, which is a good cultural fit. That's kind of how I look at it. I mean, schools that I love that are underrated. I think UCLA is a really good school.
Yeah, I agree.
I think people dismiss it. They sort of think, okay, it's California, it's not serious or something like that. But they've really invested in building out their program. And we were speaking about entrepreneurs, and they're really cultivating that tech and entrepreneurial, kind of focus.
That's right. They have a great program for your second year to actually either in a startup, start a startup yourself, have a lot of resources right there.
Yeah.
Los Angeles is getting to be actually a pretty big tech hub.
It is. It is. Yeah. It's not just Hollywood.
That's right. And I'm going to throw out another school here, which is Cornell. Cornell, which has become a very interesting place for a lot of reasons. First of all, they have this wonderful immersion program for investment banking.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
it's so, someone says to me, I want to be an investment banker, and for whatever reason, or maybe they're applying to some of the top schools, I'll also say to them, I push them to apply to Cornell, because you will get where you want to be. You will have a great investment
Yeah.
banking job when you leave
Yeah.
Cornell. So I think that's one reason, and this is a segue.
And people love it. People
They do.
love the program. It's not just, a headline. People really do find it valuable, and it really does prepare them for that transition, more so than a class, right? And so I think if that's your path, I agree totally that that's a great school.
And then another reason I like Cornell is because now they have the Cornell Tech campus
Yes.
that I want to ask you more about. But I think now it's just this really dynamic place where you go to Johnson, you spend some time in Ithaca, you spend some time in Manhattan. And I was just actually at the Cornell Tech campus maybe a month ago. It's beautiful. It's unbelievable, sort of 22nd century.
Yeah.
With that in mind, Cornell Tech. And Gabi and I are going to do a whole podcast where she talks about Cornell Tech. But why don't you just give us a taste of it right now?
So Cornell Tech is distinct in a number of ways. First being, it's a one-year program. It's one of the few one-year programs that is not necessarily designed for people who are farther along in their careers. So if you want to take less time out of your career, that's one advantage. The tech piece is really important to them, but I think it's non-traditional in general. Yes, it's people who want to be involved in the digital economy in some way. You don't necessarily have to be an engineer. I'm certainly am not an engineer by any stretch. But that non-traditional mindset, it's this entrepreneurial mindset that I think defines everything they do. It's how can we do this differently? Let's think outside of the box. And that permeates, the courses, it permeates the structure that they have, we'll get into this, elsewhere, but, big studio and, all of those different things that they have.
Really interesting. And now, if you go to the two-year program, if you go to the full two-year program up in Ithaca, you have a lot of opportunity to spend some time at Cornell Tech.
Well, now they even have the 1+1 program that they just launched this year, which I think I'm surprised they didn't do it earlier, because it was always, the Cornell Tech students wanted to get more of the traditional MBA, experience and vice versa. And so they finally launched a program that allows students to do just that. It's 1 year in Ithaca and 1 year in Manhattan on Roosevelt Island.
Which is really cool. Very, very cool. Okay, let's think about one more school. Let's talk tech again. And another school that I really love for a lot of different reasons is Tepper, Carnegie Mellon Tepper. Mm-hmm. And first of all, Pittsburgh is a great city. Mm-hmm. No one ever believes me when I say that. But Pittsburgh is a great city. It's a beautiful city. And Tepper, again, it is a pathway to really all of the top tech companies. It's amazing who has offices in Pittsburgh. It seems like everybody in tech now has an office in Pittsburgh.
Well, yeah, and when you look at who else you're plugged into, or the community you're plugged into when you're there, there's so much interaction with the engineering school and researchers and things like that, which is why they've produced businesses like Duolingo and CAPTCHA, right? Which is the thing that we all love to hate, but that came out of Tepper. Yeah. So my 7-year-old does Duolingo. I mean, it's a great product, but those are the kinds of companies that are coming out of there. And so you can go both traditional, as you said, there's a lot of corporate headquarters there, but there's also a lot of creativity because there's so much engineering innovation happening.
Right. Definitely. Great then. So, okay, Gabi, one more and then we'll wrap this up.
One more underrated school?
One more school that you just really like.
School that I really like. I'm trying to think of ones that we haven't necessarily discussed. I mean, Haas is super competitive, but I do think that for clients who are very values driven, it's a really great environment to be in. They really do put that first and foremost, and I think it's embedded into their culture. So it's not right for everyone, but I wind up working with a lot of clients who target Haas because of its culture as much as the resources that they have as being part of the whole UC system and all of that.
No, that makes sense. And just a little bit of commercial on behalf of mbaMission. And that commercial is what we do as consultants. We spend a long time with our clients, better understanding what they're looking for in a business school, and then matching them up with schools that we love, we think are great choices for them. We're really going to get them where they want to be when all said and done. Perfect.
Yeah. And I'll throw in one last thing is it extends to when you have those multiple offers. That's my favorite part, of this is that debating, you've got, a good problem to have and you have multiple offers from different schools and choosing which, to ultimately attend. That's the fun part.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And actually we are there just about now in the sense of I finally had my final clients get accepted. A couple got accepted.
That's right. That's right.
And just this past week, even though it's June, and, at this point,
down to the wire.
Real dilemmas, exactly. They have real dilemmas, having spent money some other places. On that note, thank you, everyone. First of all, Gavi, thank you very much for being my guest here today.
Thank you for having me.
Look forward to having you on a few more podcasts.
Would love to.
Goodbye, everyone.
Thanks for listening to the MBA Mission podcast. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe wherever you get your favorite podcasts so you don't miss an episode. We wish you the best of luck with your MBA applications and look forward to helping you on your journey to business school.